Three components to the EH1 curriculum: ancient texts, history, and writing. The ancient texts are the Torah, the Tao Te Ching, the Dhammapada, the Quran, and Arabian Nights. And we emphasize history. We study the history of these documents because religious texts create ideas. Or rather, faith creates ideas. Ideas create cultures. Cultures produce societies. Societies spawn communities. And communities contain, nurture, include, and exclude individuals who have beliefs. So we come full cycle. In the writing component, we simply practice, as we've said before, the five paragraph structure, and we practice paragraph formation, sentences. We practice. We enter our second text, the Tao Te Ching, reportedly authored by Lao Tzu, who may or may not have lived from around 580 to 500 BCE. It is interesting that authorship is always iffy with these works. They seem to be delivered from the womb of time. There are no videotapes of Moses, Jesus, or the Buddha. In most cases, we must trust the multitude of scribes and translators who bring them to us. In fact, one new aspect in the greatness of Shakespeare is that some scholars now doubt he existed, at least in the historical persona that stares back at us from a playbill. And in this way, Lao Tzu comes to us. His existence may be in question, but his work has lasted 2,000 years. It is a short book of 64 chapters. Having just finished reading the Torah, students rejoice at its brevity. In contrast to the code of living offered by the Torah, the Tao is quite simple. The jewels of Taoism are only three: humility, simplicity, and compassion. Now, students have the opportunity to compare the histories and tenets of these two distinctly different systems of thought in essays, and we have a Taoist speaker visit to answer questions concerning the history and modern-day influences of Taoist thought. The Gospel According to Jesus is our fourth book. Unlike the others, this is not a primary text, but a distillation of the Gospels that author Stephen Mitchell believes approximates what it is likely that Jesus actually said. Accounts of his life and teaching in the various Gospels differs. This is why we use the Gospel According to Jesus as our basis of study. However, we will read one of the Gospels in the King James Version to gain a reader's sense of the New Testament. With the addition of Christianity, we will now have studied four ancient views of the world that all, with perhaps the exception of Taoism, have recognizable effects on contemporary life. Students begin to understand the historical, philosophical, and cultural complexity of the world they inhabit. We watched three films in relation to Christianity: Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, and a documentary entitled Jesus Camp. Scorsese's Last Temptation was scorned by the Catholic Church. Gibson's The Passion was embraced by it. And Jesus Camp documents a Christian fundamentalist summer camp for children. I do, however, give students a chance to opt out of The Passion because of the violent nature of the film. But invariably at this point, students want to discuss organized religion, its peril, its history, and finally, with some prompting, its benefits. And we invite Christian speakers in as well. But we begin each year in EH1 with a discussion of the enduring questions. What are the enduring questions? Well, what are the enduring questions is an enduring question, but we usually distill it down to three things that human beings are very concerned about. What is the nature of death, and do we survive it? What are our origins, and how does humanity fit, if it does, into the cosmic design? And finally, what is the correct way to live? How should we behave? In essence, what is right, what is wrong, good and evil, etc. because human beings seem genetically encoded to seek a correct way of living. This has been the endeavor of religion, art, and philosophy for as long as such things have been recorded, and certainly before. All the books we study address these questions. The stories of the Torah, the natural philosophy of the Tao Te Ching, the Dharma of the Dhammapada, the teachings of Jesus, and the path of submission outlined in the Quran, they all speak to the nature of death. Each one seeks to place mankind in a comprehensible relationship with the cosmos, and finally, each suggests, implies, or commands a correct way of life. Now, the Dhammapada, a book containing the most crucial Buddhist teachings, is our next text. The historical Buddha lived from around 563 BCE to 483 BCE, and after his death, his teachings spread from India to China, then Japan, and slowly gained recognition around the world. For example, dating from the American occupation of Japan at the end of World War II, the Nichiren sect of Buddhism was the fastest growing religion in the world for 3 decades. The prospect of reincarnation, a primary feature of Buddhism and its predecessor Hinduism, always fascinates students. We spend at least one full class discussion period talking about likely reincarnations for people in the class. Of course, for the teacher, which is always, you were obviously a bug, Wagstaff, with no hair, and all that. It just goes on and on every year. The concept of karma interests them as well. The idea that there is ultimately justice in the universe has a great deal of appeal to them. Student essays by now will have become more detailed and logical. Edits of their work can become more critical and revisions more effective. They are expected to have reached a journeyman's level in mastery of basic punctuation, sentence composition, and essay writing. So, my challenge as a teacher in the early going is to disorient them, to make them feel less sure of their immortality, to point out the unfathomable nature of time and history, and most difficult, to shine a little darkness into their bright hormone-lit lives. And so, we speak of death and of the fact that in the space of a few generations, 100 years from now, no one who knew them personally will walk this earth. No mortal memory will contain them. I casually mentioned the fact that some 155,000 people die every day, and that somewhere between 60 and 70 million died in World War II. I let slip that if the history of the world was equated to the 24 hours of a day, that entire history of mankind would take place within the last minute of the last hour of that day, with time to spare. In other words, in terms of the earth, mankind was born at 11:59 and some seconds. Now, if the whole insignificant minute of our existence here on earth, which is of course many thousands of years to us, were transformed into the space of this room, we could take all the people we all knew and place them on a particle of dust too small for us to see, and it wouldn't cause that particle of dust to sink one iota.